There's 60 pounds gone. There's stuff that I'm doing now that I wouldn't do at 25.
It's wild, dude. It's wild. I just want to hear about your story, man, because it's so cool that we connected a year ago when you signed up, right? And we had that moment where you looked at me and you were like, "Shit, that's a big investment."
$10,000, you crazy asshole. Like, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But now we're sitting here a year later, and you just got done telling me about how obviously you dropped, almost 10 pant sizes. But I know that that's just scratching the surface on results. So I want to, chat about A, like what was the experience like, but also B, like, what are the maybe deeper differences that you can't quite see on the surface? Just give me a basic,
Sure.
profile.
Sure. So my name's Chris Tessmann. I work as I guess what you call a technical sourcer. I've been doing this for about 15 years. Basically, I try to find software engineers at like the highest levels of engineering, pretty much across Silicon Valley. But like now I'm kind of in-house with DoorDash. I live in Spring Branch, Texas, right in between Austin and San Antonio. It's about an hour into downtown either way. And yeah, I've been here about 5 years or so, and in Texas for like 15 years after growing up in Wisconsin, obviously being a Packers fan, things like that. Had to sneak that in there.
Yeah, that's the pack. We got a little Packers Bears rivalry. Not going well for me these days, but that's okay. I'm
It's
sure
getting
you
better.
and you and Brandon must have talked about that at least a decent amount.
Yeah, a ton. Usually when we'd have our coaching sessions and whatnot, it'd be the coaching session, whatever we're talking about, nutrition, whatever. And then we'd run over like another half an hour. The other part of it too, and I don't know if you remember this or not, but like I actually coached football, UW Whitewater, just up the road from where y'all are at. And Brandon played at Carthage, which is just 30 minutes from Whitewater. We're in the same division. So like actually I knew his coach relatively well back in the day, not like best friends or anything, but I like knew him. And so there's a lot to go off of. But then yeah, you combine the Packer Bear thing in there and his wife being a Packer fan too. Like I'm not gonna out him, but there are some weak moments for him this season where I got some texts that were like,
You can't
I
out
don't know,
Bears fans.
I don't know if
They all
Brandon's doing
know.
all right. I don't know if Brandon's doing all right.
Dude, we all know the pain, the Bears fan pain. But, all right, man. Well, let's and just by the way, how old are you?
I'm 41.
Okay, got it. So when you signed up, you were 40, and
I was 40.
turned
Yeah.
41. Okay, got it. Yeah, because you
Turned
started with
41 in
us.
August. Yep. So about halfway through, I turned 41. Yeah.
Yeah, and you started with us. I mean, right, pretty much this time last year, right? Do you remember when you signed up officially?
Yeah, it was. So I started in January, like I want to say it was like mid-January, and then spent the first few weeks just trying to like understand, okay, how do I even do a get up and all that, all the safety stuff that y'all do before we get into actual like work. And so I think I started the actual like day-to-day kettlebell, not just learning it, like actually doing it, probably about mid-February, maybe early to mid-February, somewhere in there. So like I'm coming up on like a full year of actually like putting the work with the bells.
Yeah. So, and we'll take a step back to pre KT, but I want to just touch on what you just mentioned. You said, you were just trying to learn the technicalities. When you started KT, had you never done kettlebells before?
So I attempted to do some stuff, like I think probably most of us that ever have listened to a Joe Rogan podcast in the last like 8 years got the whole like, well, everybody should be able to swing a kettlebell, like it's the best thing you can do. And I had jumped into that like tentatively. If I remember right, I think he had said something about like every man should be able to swing a 16 kilogram or whatever. And it's like, okay, cool. I had bought one of those probably 2016, 2017, and I had no idea what I was doing. It was totally screwed up. And like after probably 2 or 3 weeks of trying to mess around with it, everything hurt, everything felt wrong. And so like I just put it away and moved it. We moved it from a couple different houses and finally got rid of it actually like probably 6 or 7 months before I stumbled into y'all's program.
Oh, interesting.
But
So
other than
you
that,
came
yeah,
in,
no
none.
actual experience with it.
Right.
Just a bad experience.
Yeah. Yeah. And no Turkish get ups, it sounds like. I mean, you'd never even done that exercise
Absolutely
before.
none. No, and I still remember kind of getting into the program and like even before like buying in, I guess, and trying to look into it, I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. I don't know how I'm going to remember all of these steps and like get it all done and do it correctly. Like it just seemed so awkward. But 3 or 4 weeks of working with Brandon and following the program, it's like now that actually is like a really strong point, and it's that point of like, I mean, there's days where I don't necessarily love going to do it, but I feel pride in like where I've been able to get to with it.
Yeah. And where have you got to with the get up specifically?
So I back in December PR'd with a 48 kilogram uh, Turkish get up. I had been staring at it for probably a good month and a half, and was like, I was also in the middle of a really tough cycle in the middle of the program where it was kind of like, I need to do this, but I'm also totally broke down right now. It got to be like that. It was like a Thursday night. I don't know what happened. Something kind of set me off, and I just said, screw it. I'm going to go and give it a shot, and put it up. And actually, it was a lot. I don't want to say it was easy. It was a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. And honestly, kind of coming off of that cycle or that section of it, now I'm back into a bridge where it's a little bit, I wouldn't say more chill, but it's not, I'm not pushing very heavy every day.
Yeah,
I actually did it. I jumped back in with it for a few reps last night too, and was like pleasantly surprised that it's still there.
let's
Which
go.
also got me now tripped to like, hey, let's go to get that 52, which is sitting right next to it, and now
Yes.
starting to get that feel.
Love it, dude. That's amazing. That's amazing. Had you noticed, like, I mean, when you first start with get ups, right? I think get ups specifically. I mean, swings are the same. Really, it's like any weightlifting is the same, right? It's like you start, you gain really fast, you get the newbie gains, right? But then you kind of level off and like you meet a weight where okay, now I got to spend some time with this weight. Where was that for you? Like, where did you feel like you got to and you were like, okay,
I think I probably got 3-ish months in or so, because you start out not using, I mean, like any weight to begin with, just get the steps and get the motion and get your placements and all that kind of stuff right. Um, the first probably 5 or 6 PRs were like a week, maybe a half week, and then I think I probably jumped a couple bells like in the middle of it. But I remember getting into shoot, I want to say probably getting around to the middle to late April, so maybe a couple months in, and I'd gone through the 53, the 62, and I was like sitting there at 71. I had just ordered a 80-pound kettlebell, and I'm like, okay, this one actually like this one this one's got me. I have to stay locked in to do this. It's not just like I can go and use whatever strength I had accumulated over the course of my life to kind of force my will on it. It forced me to actually like get back and get better with the technique. So yeah, that was probably a couple months in, and then I want to say from there it's been about a month and a half to 2 months, maybe 3 months in between bells. But I remember hearing, I don't know if it was you or if it was Brandon or somebody else that was kind of talking about, you're ready when you've kind of started hitting that wall to an extent, when you're doing a double with a bell below, or you're doing a triple with two bells below, that's when you're ready to make that next jump. And that was kind of the first time I had heard that. And so I started kind of going off of that as far as like when I'm ready to try the next thing. And if you look at it through that lens, instead of just purely doing like how fast can I go with just one, like one is
yeah,
way different from
way
a
different.
double still a double, but a triple is going
Yeah,
to put you to the test. And if you can
absolutely.
hit that, then you're going to feel it. You'll feel a lot more confident when you grab that next bigger bell for that next one. And that was really like kind of what had happened. I think in the middle of that stuff in December, I had hit a triple with the bell two below 48,
Yeah.
and I was like,
So is that two
all right,
below as in like eight
if I'm there,
kilograms
I can
below?
do it.
Is
Yeah,
that the
eight
40
eight
kg? Yeah.
kilogram. Yeah,
Right, right, right. So
yeah,
you're
yeah, yep,
thinking
yep, yep.
one below as being a 4 kilogram, two below being 8 kilogram.
Right,
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
right, exactly.
So as you climbed up the ladder, essentially, I know you mentioned 53 to 62 to 71 to 80. So were you going um, in 8 kilogram jumps, or were you going? I guess that would be a 4 kilogram from 71. They actually all would be because you went 24, 28, 32, 36, 40. Did you go 44 as well, and then 48 eventually?
Yep, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I don't think like that was kind of where I think I did all four kilo jumps.
Yeah.
Now, especially early on, like I said, we were there. It might have been a week in between too. It was like, and I was
Yeah.
just
Right.
gonna do that week with this bell as my, heavy or whatever. Um, I don't know if you want to qualify that as like an 8 kilo jump or not, but it was like, okay, here's a week with this, here's a week with the next one, here's a week with the next one, and then we go there. But yeah,
Hmm.
I,
Yeah.
I
That's
I
cool.
tried to follow, I tried to follow the plan.
Yeah, well, and as you're new like that, and you're just getting started, it's like you grew up playing football. I'm assuming that you've lifted much heavier weights than 100 pounds in your life. I mean, that would right,
Yeah, 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 for sure, for sure. Like going back to high school, yeah, plenty that was way above, even in high school.
right. Yeah, so I'm actually interested to touch on that a little bit too. Like, how would you compare the feeling of lifting heavy bells, like the feeling of doing a 48 kilogram get up versus the feeling of whatever, a 400-pound squat or a 400-pound deadlift or bench press or something like that. What do you think is the difference in your experience with that?
So I think those like I don't know if you want to go and call them like core lifts or whatever that you would have done like in a weight room and with all your boys and whatever that situation might have been. Those all felt really good. Like they felt like, okay, I'm accomplishing something. You got other people that are around, that kind of thing. And to be honest with you, that was kind of some of the things that I was looking for that I hadn't had for like 20 years. Like those are some of the best memories of my life, right? Like setting PRs and squats and benches and cleans and stuff like that when I was a kid. I guess what I would say is let me start with like what is similar about KT is like you do have that community, even if we're not all around like hyping each other up in the gym and doing that or in the weight room and doing that kind of stuff. You throw a comment in about whatever this is that this is going on, that is going on, or your coach throws something in there and it's like there's immediately 20 dudes that are like, hell yeah, man. Like that's awesome. That takes a ton of work. You're putting it in. And especially for a lot of guys once you start getting to our ages, like that goes away pretty much after you're done with kind of like organized sports and getting back into that is a huge benefit to all of this. And I think one of the things that I enjoy the most about it. Now, if we're actually just going to compare, the big squats, the big deadlifts, all that kind of stuff from back in the day, like those are all impressive and I don't want to downplay them because they took a lot of hard work. This is wildly different because it's so different compared to all that. Everybody does that when they're playing sports growing up. And everything that we're doing here in KT is like you're not focused on one muscle group or you're not focused on arm day, leg day, back day, whatever it is. Everything that we're doing is involving all of that all the time. And I think this was something that y'all had said kind of early on too, is like that's part of why these workouts, even if they're like an hour less, if you're not spending 2 hours in the gym a day, are even more effective than doing that because your entire body's engaged no matter what you're doing. And you don't even really realize it until all of a sudden you start getting into some of those heavier weights. Like yesterday, throwing that 48K up again. I'm like, oh, okay. I'm trying to like stabilize all this stuff and I don't even realize I'm doing it. But like,
Yeah.
shoulders are activating here and like lats are activating here and like my legs are trying to like keep me your entire body's engaged in it. And when you do that, when you have exercises that you're doing that with, like I feel like it is way more comprehensive. It obviously is way more comprehensive, but you get more done in a shorter amount of time. And it's just so much more functional too. Like I don't need to squat 500 or 600 pounds again. I'm not
Yeah.
moving a 300-pound guy anymore. That's like trying
Right.
to move me. I'm just trying to make myself better, and I don't have to worry about bashing helmets with somebody else or anything like that. So this is way more effective for people that are in our stages of life and for actual life. Getting around, picking things up, putting them down around the house. All of this stuff is way more translatable to like what life looks like at 40 than 10 games a year when you're 17 or 18
Yeah.
or 25.
Yeah. It's beautifully said though, and I think that's exactly what I've experienced too. Is like you just feel so good, and also you talked about the connection of your body. You talk about your shoulders activating, your lats activating, your legs keeping up. I feel like once you like when you're just getting started with get ups specifically and with bells, it's like you don't really start to realize that until you start to get to some heavier weights where you're like, okay, now I can't just muscle through this with the strength that I got from deadlifting 600 pounds back in the day. Like now I actually have to like do the movement properly and really stabilize my entire frame. And that's when I think the power of kettlebells really start to come out here. Like you really start to realize
Yep.
like, dude, I'm fucking working everything.
Yep. Absolutely. And it goes hand in hand with what I said earlier too. Like if you're not focused on just this one muscle group, like everything has to work. And that doesn't hold up for a lot of the things that people get themselves into as far as like workout routines and things like that. Like, yeah, sweet, your arms look great, but like you can't turn around. Who cares?
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
you throw your back out sneezing now, like awesome, great, but you have like 20-inch biceps. Cool.
Yeah, yeah, right. And that's, I mean, you hit the nail on the head right there in terms of what we kind of preach in our program, right? And the cool thing about bells, especially when you combine it with the type of nutrition plan that you've been on, is you've seen the power of like they also work for body composition. It's not like you're weak without biceps. Like you can still
Dude,
get
yeah.
a cut frame for sure. It's just different than if you're going for vanity or going for these monster lifts where you're trying to put on mass. It's just a different type of strength, but you're still strong and muscular for sure.
And I've said that dozens of times probably now. Like, I feel like I'm stronger than I was when I was throwing those weights around. There's so many different things around the house or on a day-to-day basis that just are, there's not a second thought about doing them anymore. It's like, okay, just go pick that up, move it,
Yeah.
pick up nieces, nephews, friends, kids, whatever, like throw them around, like have a good time. Like that was stuff that even a year ago was like, I'm not going to do that. That's going to end up hurting tomorrow.
Yeah.
That's that type of stuff. So
Right. I love that about bells, man. We always like to try to put a finger on the statement. It's like you become physically ready for anything. It's like you don't even it's not even that. You don't even think about it. It's like, dude, I can do whatever I want to do physically now. It's like I can move in any angle. I can lift from any angle. I can do any sort of movement. You just like gain complete mastery over your body's ability to just do any physical task. I feel like with bells,
100%.
which I love, right? You get the coordination, you get the core control, you get the power from swings and snatches. So much carryover, like you said, so translatable.
Yeah.
Nice, man.
And that's, yeah, I'm sure you got other questions, but like there's stuff even about like why I started this that I think I talked with you about too, like getting in, like, I want to go elk hunt. I want to go do this stuff in the mountains, that kind of stuff. And 60 pounds ago, it would have been like, you're fucking nuts, dude. Like, there's no way.
Right.
And now it's like, okay, now I just need a tag. Like, let's go.
Yeah, right.
Let's go tomorrow. I got to wait
Love
until
it, man.
September, but let's go.
Yeah, that's great, dude. Yeah, we've one of, that brings into mind one of our clients, Mark Justice. He signed up originally because one of his big goals was to go on this huge hunt in Alaska, and he knew he didn't have
Hmm.
the physical capability to do it when he was clocking in at 270 pounds when he first joined KT. And he's a guy who got all the way down to like 185. He's 50, and he just went on his big Alaskan trip, and he talked about like he I can't remember if he shot the deer with a bow or with a gun or whatever. He's like, I dragged it out like 200 yards across the frozen tundra, and all the guys I was like with were like, dude, you're a fucking savage. And he's like, yes, I am. It's like, dude, that's that like deeper stuff that it's like when you're doing that, you don't even care. It's not like, dude, I lost 60 pounds. It's like, dude, I can fucking do whatever I want to do physically. I'm not old. I'm not, I might be 50 by number, but I can do anything I want. And like, that's
Well,
the
and,
power,
and
man.
I can speak to that at 41. There's stuff that I'm doing now that I wouldn't do at 25. I think I had mentioned it in the thing too. Like, I've been wanting to do this Baton Memorial Death March ruck for like 5 years since like a buddy of mine talked about it. And that's a marathon length course with I think 30 or 35 pounds in a ruck up in White Sands. And I'm like, okay, let me get ready for that. I signed up, ready to go. And then like this other one pops up at the end of February coming up here. That's like a 75-mile ruck from like Gonzales into the Alamo. And I just said, screw it. I'm going to sign up.
Oh,
Let's see
man.
how bad this hurts.
Yeah.
So
Mike, it's
I've
going
had
to
like
hurt.
5 years to get ready. Well, yeah, I've had like 5 years thinking about getting ready to do this 26.2 mile thing. And then, I think it was 2 weeks ago today that I saw the ad and I was like, screw it, I'm going to do it.
Yeah. I love it, dude.
I
Physically.
never would have thought about doing that a year ago.
Yeah. Yeah. In the kettlebell world, one of the things that Pavel, I think, I don't know that he coined this term, but he definitely talks a lot about the idea of general physical preparedness and how kettlebells, and specifically his program, his protocol, Simple and Sinister, which is swings and get ups. Now, obviously in KT, we take you beyond swings and get ups, right? But we start you with swings and get ups. But what we like to say is like, we just, our program is like the ultimate general physical preparedness program. Like if you want to go ruck 75 miles, you'll be able to do that. You won't have to train for that. Now it might be a good idea if you have some rucking under your belt. Like you probably don't want to just for the first
Right.
time ever drop 35 pounds in your back and go walk 75 miles. You might be fucked if you do that. But I'm assuming that you've rucked at least a little bit. But the point is like you could
Oh,
just
yeah, plenty.
you're ready for anything. You're ready for
Well,
any
and
task.
you're ready for anything, but, and then there's like the secondary mind thing of it. Like I kind of think in terms of like, numbers quite a bit, right? And I'm going, even if I have 40 pounds on my back, I'm still negative 20 what I was a year ago, just walking around, right?
Right.
Like that doesn't make it a ton easier. But when you put it in that context and you have the ability to put it in that context because you've done it, it's like, all right, let's go. Do it.
Right. Right. I love that, man. That's so good. That's so good. Well, let's get into some of these questions, 'cause I think that leads in perfectly. Before joining KT, when you joined at the start of 2024, what was your fitness and health situation like?
I would say it wasn't great. I mean, I was probably walking my dogs 3 to 5 miles a day on a daily basis. I had just gotten rid of well, actually, I hadn't got rid of it yet, but I was barely using it. Like I had a power cage in here, had squatted, bench, did all the. I think what I told you was like, okay, I've got this background with like coaching football and by osmosis, a lot of like strength training for that, being around that environment for a long time. But I had kind of maxed out on like, honestly, I'd maxed out years ago in terms of like what I knew and what was actually working. And so I was trying to find this kind of like medium of like, okay, pushing myself, trying to stay somewhat strong, but also to what I said earlier, I don't need to try to move a 300-pound guy anymore or a 250-pound guy anymore. Like I haven't done that in 20 plus years. That's stupid for me to continue on this path, especially as I getting older, stuff starts to hurt more, form, goes to shit or whatever it is. All of that stuff's kind of accumulated. To be honest, like years of doing that, whether it was boredom or laziness or I don't know what you would want to call it, like it just kind of created this stew of like, here's where you're at, dude. Like this is where you're kind of stuck. And so, yeah, I would say it's overall not good. Like I definitely was in a situation where like I was stronger than probably most people walking around, but I wasn't in good shape cardio wise. I wasn't feeling good. I wasn't able to like do any of these things we're talking about now. Like even doing stuff around the house was kind of like, got to mentally build myself up to like move some boxes around or move a couch or something like that. Let's just say everything was a lot harder and required a lot more mental preparation just to do simple stuff.
And what just like firm stats? Like what was your weight at the time?
So I think the heaviest that we had me recorded for was like 286.5. I know previously I had definitely gone up above three, like probably around like 304, 305. And that was probably within like 5 or 6 months of starting with KT. And yeah, like we said earlier too, like jean size anywhere from 42, 44, 40s sometimes, whatever. But like that was where I was starting out at.
Okay, got it. So you'd gotten up to above 300, uh, weighed in at 285 or so when you first started KT. Okay. And just generally just like did not have the physical energy and just like
Oh no.
vitality that you
Yeah,
were looking
no.
for on a daily basis. Yeah. Okay.
100%. And that isn't true just of like the activity stuff. I would say that probably leached into just about everything life wise too. Like if you've ever been there, anybody that's listening to this has ever been there, like what I'm talking about, where it's kind of like listless, foggy, whatever you want to call it. Just not all around, not a great situation.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that was kind of my next question is like, how did you feel about being in that kind of shape?
Hated it. Yeah, when you're there and you're stuck there, and you're not doing anything about it, it's not a good place to be in because, like I said, you just kind of stew in it. Like, and that encompasses and permeates everything that you do, whether it's work or whether it's stuff you do for fun, relationships, whatever it might be. Um, that really sours everything around you when you're in that kind of physical space, and then that leads it into your mental space and things like that. So, yeah, pretty horrible.
Yeah. I appreciate that honesty. I'm interested to ask you a little more about that because we talk to a lot of guys who are there, at least from a physical standpoint.
Yep.
And
Yep.
sometimes guys can kind of have this attitude of like, oh, it's not that big of a deal. It's not that important that I change. Things aren't that bad. They kind of try to play it off. What's your thought on that? I mean, do you think that guys who are in that situation, they're just putting up a front? Do you think some guys are actually okay with being that out of control with their fitness and their health and their body weight? I mean, what do you think about that? Like, what's the real of a guy
Mm.
who's been there?
I think there's plenty of people that are okay, and they're the ones that you probably don't ever talk to. You don't ever hear from.
Yeah.
And I don't know what those numbers look like, but I think for the ones that you probably end up talking to, there's at least enough self-talk going on upstairs that they're not okay with it. And if they are telling themselves they're okay with it, they know they're full of shit.
Yeah.
And it's one of those situations of like you're putting band-aids on it, and the more band-aids you put on, the fake band-aids that you put on, the worse everything gets instead of the better. Becomes that whatever, I don't know if you want to call it self-fulfilling prophecy or just like circling the drain, but it gets worse and it gets worse and it gets worse and it gets worse and it gets worse the longer you keep telling yourself that it's all right. You'll get to it eventually, or whatever that might be. Yeah, so I would say you've got both sides of that equation, and like I don't think anybody that's really actually okay with being where they're at, if they're kind of in the situation I was a year ago, anybody that's okay with it, they're never going to see you talk. Like they might get an ad served up, but like they're never going to explore it anymore. The guys that actually see this kind of stuff, see whatever content you've got going on, they're the ones that aren't okay with it, no matter how much they say they are.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. And
anybody
so what,
listening in that regard, start it today.
yeah. Well, and that's an interesting question for you then is like, what was your, I guess we like to call it a breaking point for guys. I mean, we happen to think that guys really won't join our program. I mean, you obviously know there's a significant investment involved, but beyond the financial side of things, like any guy who's where you were knows that they've got a shitload of work that they need to do, and they need to make serious life changes if they're going to see the results they want to see. So they have to be at this point of like, dude, I have to fucking change. And if I don't, like, so what was your, I guess, like breaking point that made you finally step up and make the decision?
Okay, well, I'm going to preface this answer with a little bit like this is something I say at work quite a bit too. For better or worse, like humankind doesn't proactively change anything for the better, generally speaking. Like it has to get to a point where it actually physically hurts. Like for all the intelligence we have collectively as a society and as humans, like we still only really respond to physical
Pain,
pain.
pain. Absolutely.
And
Agreed.
that's I think that's probably that's probably true for everybody. As far as like for me, let's see, man. Like there's a bunch here. So back in like December of 22, I actually had to have like uh man, now I can't think of the name of it. The cardiac ablation for AFib. Had nothing to do with like the actual health or anything like that. Like arteries, all that other kind of stuff, cholesterol, all that stuff was like actually in the top 1%, which is awesome. But I started having like electrical issues with my heart at like
Hmm.
38, 39 years old. That is a real I knew my dad had issues with that. I knew my grandpa did. I knew my uncle did. I knew that was like on the horizon, but like that's a real like you got to go down for like a heart surgery where they like blast radiation in to like scar some tissue up, dude. You wake up real quick. So that was like December 22. I spent the next year, I don't know, kind of still floating out around about it. I had started to do like the walking and the rucking more often and things like that, but never really like fully committed to any of it. Kind of did it when I felt like it, that kind of thing. I think for me, well, there was also some other stuff going on too with like a relationship going south, marriage going south, things like that. And I think a lot of that probably contributed to just to some of those issues on both sides. You have all this stuff that starts like really cascading, and hopefully this isn't too graphic or or too bad, but like I had a teacher and a coach back in high school, and I don't know if you remember any of this other kind of stuff, but like back in the like late 90s, early 2000s, like something would go right, you'd kind of do like the that like this sucks. And I did that one time about like I don't know, a homework assignment or something like that, and he kind of looked at me and goes, "What the hell are you doing?" I'm like, "Well, I'm joking about whatever." He's like, "No, you run into something that doesn't work well for you, or like you don't want to do it. You got two choices: become homicidal or become suicidal." And like he said it with joking, and like he knew he could tell me that
Yeah.
and not take it literally.
Right.
But really, that's what it comes down to: is when you're faced with a challenge, do you back down from it, or do you actually like fight back? And you combine that with a whole bunch of other different like coach speak, and like I'll even say this into like I don't know if you remember Any Given Sunday, that movie with the Al Pacino Peace with Inches speech, but like that whole thing about We're either going to stay here in hell or we're going to fight our way back into the light. Like you can take all of these different inspirational things and like things that I've experienced over the course of my life, things that I've heard and ingested. And yeah, it just got to that physical pain, mental pain, breaking point of saying, "Fuck it, I'm going to fight it," and that's where it was. I think that was kind of like the impetus for me, like when I talked with y'all, and we joked about, okay, that is going to cost that, but then you flipping it back on me and saying like, yeah, because now you got a stake in the game. You actually have to perform to it, and you have skin in this.
Mm,
Um, So yeah, I don't. Does that answer kind of all of it?
perfect.
Is there anything else you
Perfect.
wanted to cover in that? Because I could probably keep going.
No, I mean that's perfect, right? It's like I think you hit the nail on the head, which is guys don't take action unless there's very real pain. Like they have to be at a point where the pain is so bad that they know that okay, if I don't do something about this, like who knows what's going to happen, right? So you reach that point, you have your little montage of all the different motivational things that have happened in your life that kind of hit you, and you decide to I don't know if did you see an ad of ours or like how did you find KT?
I'm pretty sure it was like probably an Instagram ad that popped up, and I think that's where it came from. Yeah.
And so, what are your hesitations like as you're going through the process? You're watching our videos. You're booking a call. What kind of hesitations were coming up for you?
Shoot, well, having been in sales and things like that, I think kind of knowing sales cycles, like, and whether you're getting feel, felt, found, or whatever that whole situation is, all that, like, that was probably part of it in terms of like getting to the point of booking a call because you just know like what the funnel feels like, and
Yeah,
you automatically push up against it or whatever. I think that was probably like the only real hesitation as far as like booking a call, but like I said, you get to that point of no, something's got to be done about this. Um, I didn't really have a ton of hesitation past that. And then, we're sitting there, we're having our call, and we're kind of talking through the program and things like that. And, you had asked me like, okay, do you believe that if you do all of this across nutrition and across, steps and across like doing this work, do you believe that you'll get to where you want to be? And like that, I think is kind of the defining question of like, well, do you actually think you have what it takes to get this done? Because we could show you how to do it. And I think I had said that during those things too, is like, I'm a firm believer that if you've got a plan and you stick to that plan, there's a lot of ways that you can get there. But for me, when we started talking through this all made way more sense than everything else that I've done up to that point and variations of those things. So yeah, I don't know if that's answering the full question there either or not, but like I think my hesitations were like, okay, once I got to that point of you asking me that question, there wasn't really any hesitation on my part. It wasn't like, can this work? Like you see the testimonials, and generally I kind of like whether it's investing or whether it's work or whether it's whatever, like I don't really buy into a ton of testimonials when it comes down to it. But like when you actually see dude after dude after dude after dude after dude after dude showing what their timeline looks like, showing where they started, showing where they're at 6 months, 12 months, 18, 24 months later, it's really undeniable. Like this works. And so like there wasn't a ton of hesitation in terms of committing at that point. It's just like,
yeah, right. Ooh, it's gonna yeah, right. That's great though, right? Because you're like, okay, so there was pretty much indisputable evidence that the system itself would work. Like if I do these things, I will get the same results that I see all these guys getting.
right. And I don't know that it was like hesitation, but it's like a real conviction point. If this doesn't work, that shit's on me. That's not on them. It's on me because I didn't do the work. I didn't eat the right way. I didn't get my steps in. I didn't treat this like this is what I do now.
Right.
Like it's all
Dude,
on you then.
that's so fucking interesting because I feel like just about every guy realizes that they can clearly see like, and honestly it's not rocket science. It's like, yeah, if you eat healthier and exercise more consistently and build strength, like you're probably going to lose weight and feel a lot better. So it's not a mystery as to like whether or not that shit's going to work. But I think a lot of guys get stuck in this, like right what you said, right, is like, do they actually, not that do they believe it'll work for them, do they believe that they will actually do the work? Are they ready to step into that new identity? And what I hear you saying is you're like, I was ready for it. I knew that it was on me. I knew that these guys were going to show me a plan and that it was going to be on me to walk that walk. I mean, you've done so beautifully, but what was it that I guess made you say yes and decide to do it when you had all the info versus so many men that we talk to? Because honestly, 80% of the men that we talk to, they say no. They say, I can't afford it. I got to talk to my wife. I got too many other commitments going on, whatever they say, right? It's like, what made you say yes?
Convicted myself, right? Like, you've been lazy. You haven't done what you should be doing. And like being, I don't want to say comfortable with that. You shouldn't feel comfortable when you haven't done the right things. No, actually, you shouldn't feel comfortable. You should feel like an asshole. And I think that's what it was for me, is like, hey, wake up, dude. Like, you've got too much life ahead of you. There's too many other things that you want to do. There's too many other good things that are going on for you to sit here and continue to waste your time sitting in what you're sitting in right now. And I think that was it for me. Is like, you can kind of reduce it down to like, I was just ready to go, like whatever, that kind of thing. But it was being okay with convicting myself of like being lazy, of not being disciplined, of being comfortable constantly, like, and optimizing for comfort, like all of those things. The longer that I go down this journey and like actually in it and actually putting it in, we're not built to be that way. Like, and that's a whole other societal philosophical discussion, but there's a reason that you don't feel right when you just get done with work, where you sat all day for a lot of people, and then you go and you sit and you watch something else. And like, even if you're playing with kids or you're like playing around at golf every couple of days or something like that, like, you're still not testing yourself, you're still not pushing yourself. And we are designed to push ourselves. We've done so well in terms of like making life easy that it's like actually coming back negatively on us now.
Yeah,
And you
agreed.
should feel discomfort and pain and things like that, just so that you still have both sides of like kind of a emotional, mental, physical
Right,
experience, man. Like
right.
that's something that we need.
Dude, that's such a huge like insight into the process of KT because we always tell guys like, dude, it's hard work. You're not always going to feel like doing it. One of the first things you said when we got on this is like, you're like, dude, I don't always feel like doing it. And it's like, yeah, but it doesn't fucking matter if you feel like doing it.
No,
You wouldn't have had a choice hundreds of years ago or thousands of years ago. You would have had a choice. You would have either died or you would
yeah,
have done the hard
if I
thing.
didn't do this, I'm dead.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Now we do have that choice, but what you identified right there, I think, is something that every guy who does not have the challenge, the physical fitness, the health that they want, they got to realize that like I do need to do hard work. And not only do I need to do hard work to get to where I want to go, but guess what? You got to keep fucking doing hard work. You got to keep doing it. Even when you're fit, even when you've been fit for a decade, you got to keep doing it. But the good thing is like you were designed for that. When you do those hard things, you actually express all the genetics that allow you to feel your best. And if you're not doing that, you are missing out on all of that. All the benefit that comes from doing those hard things can't be experienced. And like you don't even realize it. You're like in a fog, like you talked about, right? You're like a shell of a human. You're like just a
Just
robot,
floating.
just floating, man, just floating,
Yep.
and all you need to do, and
Yep.
it's just so simple. Like if you just have a consistent, challenging physical outlet, and you put healthy food in your body, and you get outside and get steps,
Yep.
those three things, and you can completely rewire every part of your life. At least that's my opinion. I mean, is that your experience as well?
100%. And there's another like kind of tributary off that as well, where it's like, I'm sure you guys, you've all have seen these like memes or quotes floating around too. Is like, you, you jumping into something like this, you still have an opportunity to choose your hard, right? Like, life's going to be hard, and that could mean, heart disease or whatever it might be, because you stay on that, for lack of a better term, lazy ass path. That's going to be just as hard, probably harder than this, because there's no recovering from that. Now you're just basically like soothing yourself till it's time to go.
Mm-hmm.
This, you still get a say. You still get a say in what your heart is. You still get a chance to do the hard things, and dictate what those hard things are going to be. And along the way, get to enjoy a lot more because you're that much more capable.
Yeah. Amen, dude. Not to mention that, I mean, a 48 kilogram get up is hard, but it feels fucking awesome. You feel like a beast doing it.
Dude, the
You know,
high that I had for that like 3 days afterwards was like, okay, yeah, all right. Like
Yeah. I'm walking
it felt
tall.
like a controlled it felt like a controlled like Latimer in The Program. I don't know if you remember that movie or not, but like,
No, what is that?
oh, well,
In the
so
movie, The Program. Yeah, yeah.
the movie, The Program, yeah, like a controlled like starting defense, place at the table type thing, like
Oh, man.
totally in check, nothing like that, but like, let's go.
Yeah. I love how all your movie references are all like badass football movies. That's the only movie that's my movie canon. All right, it's all. I can't wait for the
Yep.
next football movie quote. Okay, good. So at the end of the day, correct me if I'm wrong here, but it sounds like you came into the initial enrollment call with me already having convicted yourself, already saying things have got to change. So when you hear about our system and you get hit with the investment, I lay it out for you. Here's what the year of change is going to cost you. Why did you not choose to just say, well, I'm already convicted, I'll just do it myself, as opposed to actually going all in like you did? Like, why did you?
I think I told you this at the time, but like, and maybe I'm a little bit different because I did have that kind of background and like I thought I had known stuff and I had 20 years of not actually doing it. And that finally got me to that point of being like, look, I need somebody to tell me what to do. But it's also kind of like there's similarities between like people that go and get business coaches or go and get exec coaches and stuff like that. Is like, yeah, you can continue to hack away at this your entire life, and that's all well and good, and there's something to be said for learning that. Or you can absolve yourself of that part of it and actually just focus on the work, and you can take things off of your plate that will become excuses later, right? Like, okay, here's what I did for this 4 week cycle. Well, now I got to get my next 4 week cycle up or my next 6 week cycle up, and I got to build all that. Well, that's going to take me a few hours. That's going to take constant revision. And then I'm going to be sitting there going like, am I doing the right thing? Am I not doing the right thing? And like, it just starts clouding judgment then again and again and again and again. This is just, here's the track, go. And once you get to that point in life, like just, what do they talk about? Like wisdom is like learning from other people's mistakes,
Yeah,
right? Like, I can go and learn that all on my own. I can continue to run into those walls myself in perpetuity, and I have been
right.
for decades. These guys already know what works, what doesn't. They've done it with hundreds of people. They ran a gym. They did all of these things the right way, and you have way more than ample evidence of like it working. So remove all those other distractions, whether it's like planning your workouts, planning your nutrition, monitoring both of those things. Like you've got a coach that's going to help you do all that stuff. You got a coach that's seen probably a couple hundred other people go through the same process and is going to have better ideas. Like you run into this thing, you have an issue with like this type of food or something like that, or your macros or whatever like are a little bit different. You got somebody that knows what to plug and play with instead of you now jumping in and spending another hour or 2 hours or 3 hours researching something, finding out 3 weeks later after doing the same thing over, it didn't work. When you start stacking up, even if you look at it through the lens of like what your salary or your hourly rate is, like for your job, you're going to spend way more time than what you paid for out of pocket trying to figure this out and playing the guessing game all along the way. So like that, I think that was part of it. And maybe, I don't know, maybe that was me sitting in that chair, hearing that number and me justifying that way, like justifying the expenditure. Maybe that's what it was. But to be honest with you, I don't know how many times have I said it to you guys. Like this is the best money I've ever spent in my life. Not even a question. I would do this 100 times over.
Mm, that's lovely.
Like literally, there's nothing.
That's good
I
stuff.
mean, how much money have I put into like different weight sets and all this other kind of stuff, different other, meal prep plans and all these other different types of things. And one, when you do it and you kind of like break it off into like little smaller, more easily digestible chunks, whether it's money wise or other, you don't you don't ever actually get convicted that way either, right? Like you don't have to make it worth your while because it's just this little like slow bleed out, like death by a thousand cuts. This is one like, I better sew this thing up and get ready and get going because I got skin in this game
Yeah,
from the jump.
man. I fucking wish that every guy we spoke to had your attitude on that. And it's interesting how you laid it out with this idea of like there's certain type of guys who will invest in business coaching or whatever it may be. And I think you're right. I mean, that's, you know, we had our beliefs broken on that. I don't know if you've ever heard the story of us investing in Gym Launch, which is like a gym growth business coaching. It was back in 2018. I had been watching them for over a year, wanting to invest, but it was like a $16,000 investment. And at that point in time, I had never invested more than like 3K in business coaching. So I'm like, this has got to be bullshit. Like, you know, there's got to be something off with this. But I just kept seeing proof and more gyms and more proof. And finally, I'm just like, you know what? And I tried for 18 months to hack their system and do it myself. And like, oh, I can figure this out on my own, right? I got my ego in the way. I can figure this out. I'm just as smart as this dude. And after 18 months of frustration, I remember saying to one of my employees, Kimberly at the time, I said, either we're going to invest in this or I'm going to close the gym down because I'm at my breaking point. And we invested, and in 9 months, we had tripled our profit. We had doubled our revenue. We had grown our gym by like 150 clients. And I'm like, it was all because I had what you talked about, which is I just had somebody who had already done it, who had already proven all the steps, who could see things I couldn't see, you know, and also just gave me a path. I didn't have to waste any more time or mind space on like figuring out, am I doing this right? Is this what I'm
Right.
supposed to do? Is this actually what is supposed to be done here? And you just instead follow a plan. And it's like that changed everything in my life, to be honest with you. And it was the best
Yep.
investment that I had ever
Yep.
made. So I can definitely relate to you being like, it's the best money that I ever spent. And we've invested hundreds
Right.
of thousands of dollars in business coaching since then, because we learned that like, dude, if you can get somebody to clear the path for you and then also guide you on that path, like it's a no-brainer.
Yep. Yep. And well, you get to accelerate everything so much more quickly then, because like even like in this capacity, going back to this capacity, now it's not, it's my hour out there in the garage with the bells, give or take a few minutes, and it's my hour walking the dogs or whatever. So like I 2 hours a day, right? If I had to do all the rest of that between like trying to figure out what my nutrition was going to be and trying to figure out what the workout was going to be and trying to figure out how many steps I needed to get that day, and am I actually doing this? Am I performing this movement correctly? Am I doing this the right way? Not even getting into like if you'd actually hurt yourself because you're not you're going too fast. It doesn't make any sense. This is going to sound really weird and really maybe even salesy. It makes no sense to not pay somebody to clear that way.
Agreed.
Like
That's the premise of our
it
business.
that's exactly what it is. And whether you look at it at your business or I mean even like when I was at places like Uber and stuff like that, and people talked about like we're not talking about like selling rides, right? Like we're giving people time back, delivery services, things like that, like having somebody clean your house, all of those things, like those all allow you to accelerate the next step for you so much more quickly because you're spending all of your brain power and all of your energy on productive activity instead of like, for lack of a better term, kind of the admin part of it.
Yeah. And the guesswork, right? It's like the guesswork
Yeah,
side of
and
things.
the guesswork. Yeah,
Right.
100%.
That totally hampers dudes. And not to mention, I mean, you're trying to, if you at least just talk about the fitness world, and the business world is the same, right? But there's just so much shit out there. There's so much information out there. There's just like endless. I mean, absolutely
Yep.
endless. So to try to figure that stuff out on your own, I mean, it's a, you know, anyway, I wouldn't want to do
Well,
it.
you can play the trial and error game forever and never
Right.
get anywhere.
Yeah. Agreed. I've been there with my fitness until I found kettlebells, honestly. And that's why we started teaching it to people. Okay, so really quick, let me just touch on the investment side of things because you had mentioned skin in the game a few times. Do you feel like making such a large investment from a financial standpoint, having that skin in the game, do you feel like that was a catalyst for you in any way in particular?
Absolutely. Like you don't give yourself the option anymore, right? Like you can't back out of it. If you don't execute, you're out that money. That's on you. Like, so you better get your money's worth. Otherwise, it's all on you. I don't. Yeah, you have to do it because now you put some other blood, sweat, and tears into this already in the form of cash. It's on you. You have to do this. Like, there's
Yeah,
no other option. And
right.
I don't know if you want to call it like kind of like that burn the ships mentality or whatever it might be, but like that's really what it is. We only have one path forward from here.
Yeah. And I love how you related it to like the death by a thousand cuts because you talked about this like slow trickle of like who knows how much you spent on this stuff over the years trying to get yourself fitter in shape, but you didn't feel the pain of spending that money because it's just a little bit at a time. But like when you make the type of investment that you made into KT, it's no longer that. Now it's like you got something that is driving you every day. And then when you're surrounded with the accountability structure that we provide, it doesn't matter if you don't feel like doing it. You show up and do it. It changes a lot, man.
Dude, it changes everything.
Hmm.
Changes everything.
I like it. So, by the way, we're at almost 11. So, if we need to cut it at any point, you just let me know.
Yeah.
We've already gotten a ton of gold on
No,
here,
I'm
but
good.
I got a few more questions
I
for
think
you.
I'm good.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. Yep, I'm good.
So tell me this: you make the decision to join KT. We talked a little bit about you at the start, where you're learning the movements, you're getting things going. Did you have after you made the decision to join? Did you have any feelings of like buyer's remorse, regret? This isn't going to work for me, anything like that, or were you just like, dude, I got in, and I was just like all in, and that was it?
I'd love to tell you I didn't. I think if I what I did feel kind of like in those first few weeks before you actually get underneath weight and you get weight moving, there is probably a little bit of apprehension, right? Like, yeah, you start wondering that, is this going to work? Am I going to jack this up? Am I going to screw this up? Am I going to not be able to do this? But once you actually get underweight, and honestly, like a lot of that got eliminated really, really quickly too, kind of like with like, for lack of a better term, than like the nutritional cleanse you do the first couple weeks.
Mm-hmm.
You show up and if you do what you're told and what you're taught, at the end of like that week and a half, 2 weeks, you're down like 7 to 10 pounds without actually doing anything differently other than eating and drinking water, eating right
Yeah.
and drinking water.
Right.
That's it. So that kind of calmed whatever bit of apprehension that I had. But like, yeah, I guess for like that first week and a half is kind of like I'm feeling about this 75-mile ruck right now, right? Like there's a little bit of a
What
pucker
have I
factor
done?
going on where it's like, what did I do? What did my dumb ass get myself into here? But to be honest with you, those are the best stories and the best experiences you're ever going to have in your life. Because that stuff
Yeah.
you're not sure if you can do it. And, yeah. Anyway, I'm kind of going off the rails of there a little bit, but like, yeah, that would be the only real apprehension I ever felt was like in that kind of transitory period where it's like, okay, I've committed. I'm doing the initial stuff. I'm not underweight yet. I'm not actually putting in real work. You are, but you're not like feeling it because you're not
You're not lifting.
moving heavy things.
Yeah. Right. Right.
And then maybe even a little bit of it as you're kind of like going through, like the really ultra lightweights. Like, okay, like the first time I get into swing, and I think y'all started me like pretty low. But like I start swinging with correct technique on like a 16-kilo kettlebell. And it's like, the hell am I even doing?
Yeah.
My technique sucks because the weight flies, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's a little bit of that. But like, if you've been through any of this stuff in the past, you know that there's like self-correction, and like as you get underneath, even the stuff that I'm doing in snatches right now, like kind of breaking into that over the last 3 or 4 weeks. Like the first couple times I'm doing that, and I'm not putting really any weight there at all. I'm just trying to like get through the movement. It didn't feel right until like I actually started going up 3 or 4 bells from like where I
Yeah.
started. And then
Right.
it's like, oh, now there's some tension here again. And like
Right.
this feels a little bit better, and this is a little bit harder. And this is going to, I can see the progression is going to be here now. So anyway,
Yeah.
like those were two kind of spots where if I felt anything, that's where it was at.
Yeah. Well, and in terms of, you mentioned once you start to get under some weight, how crucial do you think it was to have a coach be able to guide you through and get your technique right versus you trying to do it on your own?
God, you need somebody else like behind you, in front of you, to the side of you, whether it's recording or like there physically. It's anything you do physically like this that like actually requires technique. You need somebody else watching it because there's no way in hell you have any idea if you're doing it correctly, especially when you're doing it for the first time. You don't have any kind of frame of reference like, is this the way this should feel? Am I supposed to be feeling this in my shoulder? Am I supposed to be feeling this like in my core? Am I supposed to be feeling this in my calf? Like whatever that might be. You can try this on your own. You're going to end up derailing yourself in a couple weeks when you do something incorrectly and strain or sprain or whatever it might be. And I did that too along the way. And like Brandon was a huge help and kind of like helping me navigate some of that stuff. I had some pretty nasty sprains and strains like pop up, especially early on with the get ups because I was getting my feet in the wrong places and things like that. But that's stuff that I would have not known was the reason if I didn't have him watching it and I didn't have him pointing out where my technique was failing or was incorrect. That's kind of goes hand in hand with that whole like trial and error and like keep going on forever. Like you can do that. You can beat yourself into the ground with that, but you're just going to keep delaying your progress again and again and again and again and again without somebody kind of over the shoulder telling you like, okay, now you're on the right path, or focus on this a little bit more, or if you continue to do that, this is what's going to happen. You need somebody paying attention to all that for you, no
Yeah.
matter how good you are or you think you are at this.
Yeah, right. That's huge, man. And do you feel like you kind of got the same with the nutritional side of things as well?
Yeah, dude, like 100%. I mean, we fluctuated a lot of our stuff very early on to try to get it to work. It worked relatively quickly, but then once we really got dialed in is where it accelerated. And instead of, like I don't really remember what the timelines were, but if I was losing 10 pounds over the course of like a month or a month and a half for the first like 5 or 6 months, dude, I go back to like I think early November, I came back from Vegas, and I don't know if you and I had talked about that or not, but I'm like, okay, I got to go to Vegas for a few days for kind of a pseudo work thing. Where anybody in here know where I could get like some heavy bells in Vegas, right? Like, and the most I could find was like 71. I'm like, how does Vegas not have anything above a 71-pound bell? Anyway, I came back from there, and I think I was at like 251. So like right before the election, it was that weekend right before the election, and now I'm what, November, December, end of January. Well, really, a week or two ago is when I actually dropped below or hit my 60 pounds off number. But like I went from like 251.4 getting back from that trip to like now, was it yesterday or the day before, it was like 224 something. That feels, and that was over Thanksgiving, that was over Christmas, that was over New Year's.
Yeah.
I don't know about anybody else. I've never lost weight over that period of time ever before in my life, no matter what I was doing. That's always when you pick up your next couple for the year. Generally speaking, that's always when it happens. And instead, I lost basically like 26 pounds over the course of that time. I was already working with 250 as opposed to 286,
Right.
right? So like it's not like I dropped 25 pounds that was just there by like standing up and getting out of bed in the morning. I've already earned 30 to 35 pounds off, and now I've taken another 25 off in that 2 or 3 month span. And yeah, the only way all of that stuff works is with somebody else that's paying attention to all that alongside you.
Man, that's huge. And tracking consistently. I mean, I assume that during that time you were pretty
Oh
on
yeah,
top of tracking your food intake, your stats,
yep,
all that stuff, right?
yep, yep, yep. And I don't want to say this and like preemptively derail anybody, but like the further you get on and you know what works, like I still track every day.
Yeah.
I might not hit like the like if it gets past like 3 or 4 and I know where my calories are for the day and stuff like that, I might not be down to like the
Yeah, the
calorie
gram.
anymore. Like
Right,
I'll
right.
throw something in there. But like I know what's working and what doesn't. And I know if I have, if I pop up another pound or two, it's well, yeah, you had this dish that, so and so made, and yeah, you had this pasta stuff that you never eat generally, or you haven't for like the last year. Like I know what's gonna come and I know what to expect on the back end of it. Uh, but yeah, I actually just got the renewal notice for my Fitness Pal like 2 or 3 days ago. I'm like, dude, that's all happened inside of a year, right? Like this has all happened inside of a year, and it's absolutely insane.
Dude, that's so good. I mean, how does it feel to, because what you just explained there to me is kind of how I see things as well. It's like the purpose of tracking and measuring really, really closely for a period of time is to really learn, like to truly learn. Because it's really easy to understand calories and macros. You can understand that by reading a quick summary of like, yeah, that makes sense. If I
Yep,
eat below my, if I eat less calories than I burn in a day, I'm going to lose weight. And if I'm this body type, I eat this macros. But you can't actually fucking know it until you've spent significant time actually doing it and actually hitting those numbers. But what you learn and what you gain, like you now have a nutrition base for the rest of your life. Like you're never going to be confused again
one hundred
about what you
percent,
need to do to eat for your body, right?
100%, and that's like having that understanding. I think is kind of really understated when it comes down to it for most people. Like generally speaking, at least what I experienced, like you kind of grow up with whatever your family kind of made, and your nuclear family and your extended family, whatever. But like everybody kind of has their own. This is how we all operate, and maybe it's now we have all this access to the world's information constantly and things like that, and you can kind of see maybe that isn't a great idea. Maybe eating that way isn't the way it's supposed to be. And maybe it's not genetics. Maybe it's actually just like you eat like shit. But once you actually see what works and you see what's making you feel good, and that's the other thing too. It's not just eating to drop certain weights and things like that. It's like what is actually making you feel your best, and that's something that I don't think a lot of people ever really consider until they're monitoring it and they've got somebody else monitoring it with them. And until you're measuring all those things, you don't really have any idea. Like if you feel off for a day, 9 times out of 10, that's not you being sick or some other kind of like influence on you. You ate something that either doesn't agree with you or you shouldn't probably eat, or you ate too much of it or something like that. You can tie about, I'd be willing to bet 80 to 90% of like those off days to what you
Agreed.
consumed as opposed to like anything else that's in your environment.
Yeah.
And that's stuff that you just don't realize until, yeah, you're measuring it, you're paying attention to it, you're seeing what affects you what ways. And until that's a focal point, you have no idea that that's actually what's going on.
Yeah, I agree. And I've had that exact experience in the last 6 months. I completely have given up alcohol and haven't had any alcohol in over 6 months. But now if I like go out to dinner, for instance, and I have dessert, I will wake up the next day and I will feel hungover like I was drinking. And
Yep,
it only happens when I
100%.
have like a heavy dessert. I'm like, oh my God, I get hungover from having a piece of cheesecake after dinner. Like that's insane. And it touches on exactly what you just said, right? It's like what you put in your body. That's what I think something that people don't realize is like your body responds in real time to the input every single day. The food you eat, the activity you do. If you sit all day versus if you have a day where you're up and you get 10,000 steps and you get a workout in, the next day you're going to feel way different based on what you did that previous day. And that's why I think a lot of guys don't understand. Like even at 287, when you join KT, dude, you were 1 week away from feeling probably almost as good as you feel now in terms of you cleaned up your eating, you drank the water, you started moving, and boom, your body responds right away. Now you still had a year worth of like losing weight and getting stronger and capitalizing on all that, but your body responds right away. And I wish every guy knew that
Yep.
because then it would just be like, yeah, just fucking get to work, dude. Stop thinking about it. You shouldn't be where you are because what you're doing is not the way that humans are supposed to live. Like we just need to start doing the basics. And if you do that, it'll change fast. It'll change right away.
It changes overnight. I mean, literally overnight. And that's just speaking of overnight, like that's the other part of it, sleep wise. I don't know how much y'all talk with guys about sleep and stuff like that, but like anybody that's like dealt with sleep apnea and anything like that too, like that's again all stuff that ran in my family. Like I haven't dealt with any of that stuff basically since like about a month in. I sleep better, paying attention. Like the sleep number tells me it's way better. You know, unless I mess up and do something different, like in whatever, sleep in a hotel room for like 3 or 4 nights in a row, whatever it is. All of your sleep gets better. All of that, like you're ready to go to bed. At the end of the day,
Right.
you're not trying to like stay on and look at, dumb shit on Instagram or whatever, like, or whatever your mode of distraction is. Like all of that stuff starts like dropping off really, really quickly when your head gets right and your body starts getting right. Like you start really stepping out of the doom cycle really quick.
That man out of the doom cycle. That's true. You start taking care of the foundation of you and all that other stuff. It's like you realize that that's the stuff that's been holding you back, man, keeping you stuck. You don't need it. So, what do you think is the try to summarize well, first off, where you mentioned where your weight has gotten to, but clarify for me, like what are the big results that come to your mind in terms of KT, and then maybe talk to me about like some of the most impactful things that aren't just like hard numbers for you.
So I think the numbers are actually probably, it's fun to hit them. It's fun to, see the PRs go up. It's fun to feel that. It's fun to see the numbers drop, like in terms of your weight, but like all that stuff is kind of like just, it's like billboards along the way, right? Like that's a temporary thing. You want another football reference? It's kind of like the old the Bill Walsh, like the score takes care of itself when you're doing the right things. Overall, it's just how I feel on a daily basis. Like I'm not, well, I'll throw this in here. Why not? Screw it. So like historically, like even going back with work, a lot of people I've worked with in a lot of different places, like our community, what we do is relatively small and like everybody kind of knows each other for the most part. I acquired this name, this nickname ways back, Grumpy Uncle T, because I would sit in these meetings and I'd be like, that is the dumbest shit I've ever heard in my life. And I'd roll my eyes and do it. And like, that's not to say I don't still do that when I hear dumb stuff, right? Like that's still going to always happen. But I'm just a much happier dude now. Like maybe happy is not even the right word. I'm just not predisposed to like seeing that's stupid, right? And even if it is stupid, does it affect me? Maybe. If it does, like, am I going to let it affect me more than it needs to? No. Like that's not my concern anymore. I'm not that hammer looking for every nail to like just drop knowledge on or whatever. So like there's a part of that where it's just like you're just in a better headspace because everything else around you doesn't remind you of like the state that you're in because you're in a good state. So there's that. And then, we've already talked a bunch about this kind of stuff, but like just capability. Well, you get up on a Saturday morning and instead of like the first thing that even during football season, as much as I love football, I don't get up Saturdays during the football season and throw game day on and sit on the couch or sit and watch games anymore. And like, I don't feel bad about that. I still have them on or in the background or whatever, but like I'm getting stuff done. I'm enjoying the rest of my life instead of just going and sitting on a couch and vegging out for like the next 9 to 10 hours. Like, and that affects your next day and that affects the day after that and all these other different types of things. The other things that you notice too, like I actually just had the conversation the other day. I forgot if it was Saturday or Sunday. Must have been Sunday. And there were a couple things that I want to do, but it's kind of dreary or whatever. And like by noon, I sat down on the couch and I'm like, nah, there's more to get done. There's more to get like, but I just instinctively knew from history, the second you sit down is kind of like the second you give up on the day, right? Like give up on the day at like 9 p.m. Give up
Yeah.
on the day at 8 p.m.
Yeah.
Don't do it at fucking noon. And the other person I was talking to was like, yeah, and when you get up, go put your shoes on. Like even if you're just walking around the house, go put your shoes on because that's going to be the other part that like gets you to go and do the rest of it. And like lo and behold, that was enough for me to go like, okay, I got to go up and get my last check mark of the week because last week was hellacious. But I went and did that Saturday. I went and did that Sunday. Like got my last two workouts of the weekend. Jumped right into Monday and Tuesday again. Got the house ready to go. Got a bunch of stuff cleaned up. Got a bunch of other stuff taken care of over the course of the day. And all of a sudden, yeah, there it is. 7:30, 8 o'clock at night. Knocked
Yeah.
out a bunch of stuff that would have been clouding my judgment and would have been clouding my, kind of frame of reference if I hadn't gotten them done going into this week. Everything else just gets a lot lighter just because you're picking up, you're physically stronger, but you're mentally stronger. Nothing really becomes overwhelming anymore. It's just, okay, this is what it is. I'll handle it. Deal with it.
Man, that's huge, dude. That's the real payoff.
Oh yeah, that's that. Like I said, all the PRs, the pounds shed, all those numbers, they're phenomenal. Don't get me wrong, but after you've hit your first couple of those, and you really start hitting a stride, you start feeling better. You start feeling capable. You start wondering like, hey, what can I do next? Once you start having those things creep in, those are great. The road markers are and billboards are great. It's awesome seeing that badge pop up in the group chat and stuff like that. But that is so far in the back in terms of like what the actual accomplishments are and how that affects your life. Like it's cool, but it pales in comparison to like just the way that you see every day that you wake up.
Man, that's like it's like rewiring your outlook on life is kind of what you just explained in my mind, especially when you said this like realization of like, what more can I do? Like you literally changed from a dude who was grumpy Uncle T to like, hey, I can fucking do anything I want, man. You went from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset.
Right. And I mean there were aspects of my life that I had kind of growth tendencies and like I've always acclimated to like investing and things like that and like trying to like optimize in a lot of different manners. But this was the one thing that had been holding me back for years. And the whole whatever you want to call it, the whole rising tide lifts all ships. Like you get your health right, you get your nutrition right, you get your body feeling right, you get your brain feeling right, and actually like operating, as close to optimal as you can get it, or at least not in a suboptimal state. All of the rest of that stuff, even if you're doing all that right ahead of time, all of that gets exponentially better as well. And now you just have these stack this, stack that, stack this, and it accelerates everything. It makes everything exponentially better. And still got life's challenges and things like that that pop up here and there, but like whatever, handle it, deal with it, on to the next thing.
Yeah,
Here we go.
that's
So
great, dude. I
yeah,
love
you're
it.
just so much better equipped for every day, man.
Yeah, it's so cool that you've experienced all that. Truly, like especially because I haven't seen you in the flesh since you were a guy we've been talking about pre KT. So just like a, I wish I could see every guy only right when they sign up, and then a year later after they've completely transformed. So I'm just like, oh, you're a fucking
All
new
right.
guy. I haven't met you before. How
Yep.
how's your life?
I know that. Trust me. Well, and that's the other thing. Like beard shorter,
Yep.
hair shorter. Like
Trust
all
me, I
this stuff
noticed.
is different because it's like,
I noticed.
yeah, I had hair down to like my shoulders and stuff. Like I didn't mind it, but everything changes, man. Once you get right, everything changes.
I mean, don't take this the wrong way, but you look like a scrub when I talked to you a year ago, and now you
It was like a
look
what?
a scrub. You
Oh
look
yeah,
like a
for
guy who
sure.
you
Percent.
just look like a guy who didn't have like pride in how he carried himself and just like certainty that he was doing all the things that he needed to do to manage his shit first and foremost. And now you look like that guy. Like that was the first thing I noticed when we got on. It was like it wasn't that you've lost weight or that you look more fit. It was like, dude, your beard is cleaned up, your hair is cleaned up, you've got a big smile on your face. Like that was not the guy that I met a year ago. And I think that's just a reflection of how we feel about ourselves. And I think how we feel about ourselves is a reflection of the work that we put in each day or the work that we don't put in each day. And you've
Yep.
experienced that.
Well, and that's that vicious cycle we were talking about earlier. Like the conviction part of it. You're convicting yourself if you're not doing it, whether you admit to it or not. It's just that's a negative conviction that just makes things worse and worse and worse and worse and worse.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
handle your shit.
Right. So what would you say to a guy? I mean, that's good advice. That's perfect advice. That answers my first question is what would your advice be to somebody who's looking at KT?
Handle your shit.
Advice is handle your shit.
Man up.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So if somebody's on the fence, let's say you got a buddy or a colleague or a family member, somebody's on the fence, they're thinking about making changes, they're looking at KT. What would you say to them?
Well, I wouldn't try to like point to anything specifically in their life. I would well, maybe I would. I don't know. I guess first commentary would be kind of like just kind of a living testimony of like if you know me, if you know who I've been, and like even like the buddy that I kind of like reached out to you about a while ago, like you know who I've been. He's known who I've been since we were like 14 years old, uh, and have seen all cycles of life, both going both ways. You see what the difference is. It's undeniable, right? Like I'm different, like you just said. I'm different. I'm 100% different than I was a year ago. So like there's that like living testimony thing. Now it actually had to come to words. It's like dude, look at this as like the best thing I can do is tell you like whatever that your initial investment is, obviously own that, pull the trigger on it, treat it like it's a sunk cost if you have to, but that is going to change the way that you feel about yourself. That's going to change the way that you feel about your relationships with spouse, with kids, with friends. You are going to change dramatically over the course of a year. And there's going to be none of it that's negative. Like it's all going to be positive. And it's not just going to be your physique. It's not just going to be your nutrition. It's not just going to be your capability. It's going to be how you feel about yourself, how you feel about everybody else around you, how you view the world, how you view everything else that's going on around you. Like that can mean a number of different things. One that's kind of like stopping the doom scroll or stopping whatever it is that we call that. For a lot of guys, I think that don't want to admit it, that is a big, big, big part of life today. You can put a stop to that shit right now. But it's on you to do it. And there's that aspect of it, but then there's like the optimization aspect of it. There's like the killing the bad and enhancing the good. And when you make that commitment to yourself and you make that commitment to your family, you make that commitment to the people that are around you, you can change your entire life in the span of months, man. And if you think about what you spend on stupid shit, on silly shit, on shit that doesn't matter, it's completely insane to look at this as like a cost. maybe that's the best way to put it. This isn't a cost, this is an investment, and it's going to pay dividends that you cannot even begin to fathom. And honestly, like if you really want to make the connection, you can replace this investment monetarily just with the amount of time you save, but also with like how you're going to approach everything else that you look at. If you're even remotely inclined in any kind of like investment or like in any kind of like money making, business ownership, stuff like that, whatever it might be, jump into that whole cash flow quadrant thing, right? Like wherever you are in that, you do something like this, you are going to make that money back and not even realize you did it just because of how much better you're performing across the board. I don't know. Maybe that's like some esoteric bullshit. I don't know, but like that's the way that I feel. Like I am paying more attention. I'm managing. Uh, I'm managing more outside just like kind of the work day to day. And like my ROI on this is probably at least twofold in the course of a year, and that's not even including how I feel or how I operate on a day to day basis. I've got more energy to go and like actually attack other different stuff that I never had before. So
Beautiful.
put it up, go hunt, go kill, go be a man, and do what you got to do. But like, for the love of God, don't just sit there and like waste away.
Right. Man, you're like a marketing billboard, dude. You say all the things.
Dude, I've had way too many like locker room speeches and football
Yeah.
movies and all sorts of like other business calls and like circle backs and all that. Like I know all like it just weaves, man. Like it's everywhere.
This is the culmination of all those moments here. This is your time.
100%.
Yeah, I mean,
100%.
I've recently I can't even remember where I heard this, but I heard the term infinite ROI, and so now I try to liken this investment to having infinite ROI because you just talked about all the things you've experienced in the last year. Well, guess what? You're 41. Now you get to live the next 40, 50 years of your life as this guy instead of the guy that I sat down with a year ago. So who knows
Well, 100%.
the ROI that you're going to experience
Well, that's
from the next 4 decades.
and that's the other thing that like there's no way to measure that, right? But just like there's no way to measure how much better you feel.
Right.
You have to know it. Like you
Yeah.
have to experience it. And I think honestly that's probably part of like that scares a lot of people. Like they get
Yeah.
so comfortable with like where they're at now, and even if it sucks and it feels like shit, they'd rather feel that like know their environment and not break out of it. And it's like once you do it, my God, you just want to shake the shit out of yourself and say, what the hell were you thinking for so long? Like life is so much better when you actually like just go and attack it and like go live it on your terms. And you're capable of doing that as opposed to like, well, what are we binge watching on Netflix tonight? Or we're like, and again, as a sports guy, like I've been a sports guy my entire life, sitting and watching a game, like what are you getting out of that? You're
Yeah.
cheering for laundry in the first place. Like, oh, like I get it. I'm wearing laundry, right? Like everything about your life gets better when you start challenging yourself and you start forcing yourself into uncomfortable situations and beating them.
Right. Yeah, and it's funny you talk about cheering for laundry and like you I think what you've experienced, this is a good way to kind of sum it up, I think, is like we talk about the circle of control versus the circle of concern, right? That's like one of our first mindset lessons. And you have just been so focused in your own circle of control over the last year, controlling your steps, your nutrition, your sleep, your working out, and all of these things that were in your sphere, the Packers, politics, whatever else, right? They're still there, but you're just not concerned with them anymore. And so you start to crowd out the bad that you can't control with the good that you can control. And all of a sudden, everything in your life is better because you're no longer being weighed down and you're no longer giving energy to these things that you have no control over and that don't actually mean shit in your life. I still like the Bears. I still hope they win. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to sit there and waste my time watching them because why? I don't have any control over it. Like,
Right.
still go
Yep.
Bears. And, pardon my French, but
Well,
fuck back.
and I was just gonna say, I mean, like I still care because I still love talking shit about how bad they are. But anyway,
It's a perfect culmination to a really great conversation, man. It was such a pleasure to hear the story, man. I've just been so I know I poke you every now and again when you hit a PR with your get up, and it's just been fucking awesome to see the picture of you
Yeah, dude.
with no weight overhead when you first started versus the picture of you with the 48 kg is just like, it's just a classic. It's like, man, look at this dude.
Yeah, dude. I think there's like one of those where like the guts like hanging out of like a 2XL shirt. And
Yeah.
like I actually have that still. Like, dude, my entire closet has to go.
Yeah. Good. Sorry about
But
that.
I still have that shirt, and I threw it on probably 2 or 3 weeks ago to like kind of do some painting around the house or whatever. And it was like, the fuck is this dress? This is ridiculous.
I love it, man. Well, thank you so much for taking
Yeah,
time
man.
out of a Wednesday, and I'm sure
No,
we'll
dude, this
connect
is
again
great.
soon.
This is fantastic. Thanks for
Yeah.
asking me, man.
Yeah, you got it, man. Once you hit that 52 kg, I'll expect to see
Well, the
video follow-up.
56 and the 60 are stacked too.
Let's go, baby.
So,
I love it. Good stuff, man. Thank you, Chris.
you bet, man. Appreciate it,
All right,
Sean.
brother.
Thank you.
Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye.